Hey friends, thanks for hanging out with me today. I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between talent and skill because my mindset has really changed over the last several months that I've been really diving into my artwork. Um, so the main difference between talent and skill is talent is something that you just have a natural ability. It comes easy to you. God just gave you a gift, a talent when you were born. And skill is something that can be learned. So, and there's a combination of both. For instance, nobody was born knowing how to play the guitar. That's always a skill that needs to be acquired. You can learn a lot of languages, or you can learn to cook, and all of these things are skills that literally anyone can develop if they choose to put their mind to it. So as we approach our artwork, I used to have this concept that I didn't have any talent when it came to artistic design. I knew I was a creative person, but but because I had trouble just getting what's in my head to an actual visual art form, I felt like I didn't have any talent. And so when I began to think about the difference between skill and talent, I realized that if I put some effort into developing my skills, and that the natural creativity that I know I have will be able to come out and express itself better. So ultimately, I think that developing our skills is kind of the gateway to untap our talent. Because I think there's a lot of talent that we possess within ourselves that we're unaware of because we really haven't given it an opportunity to come out. So as you're putting this first layer down of watercolor, it's kind of an intuitive process. I mean, I do have a plan. I know that I'm going to be outlining and defining the spaces. So I'm kind of creating, big pockets of space. I like how the semicircles come in from the outside, but don't give it too much thought. Just, start making shapes and build on itself. And yeah. So the next step is to create your defined spaces. I just use a Sharpie, really simple. This is when I decided to create kind of a neurographic piece. And neurographic, I Googled it for you. Neurographic art stimulates new neural pathways by combining art and psychology. It works with the subconscious mind through drawing. So there is a kind of a specific method to it. You start by creating lines, and the two rules for neurographic lines are and a psychologist or a therapist would encourage you to be thinking about whatever you're processing emotionally. And so, but when you're making the lines, you're conscious in thought, but you don't follow a repeated pattern or design. You just kind of let the lines flow over the page. And then the only other rule is that they begin and end on the edge of the paper. So I've already done that in what I've established so far. So the next step is to go through all of the intersecting lines, and you just have to, you round out the corners so there's no harsh corners. I decided to add a few more lines to the ones I already have to add to the neurographic effect. But yeah, then you just go in the, it's funny that it's supposed to be very good for your brain, and in the end, and build new neural pathways. And in the end, it kind of resembles, in my mind, what a neural pathway looks like in our little synopsis of our brain cells. So I went ahead and covered this layer with Mod Podge because I am going to be working with acrylics next. And as I've said before, sometimes when you are working with pens and acrylics, and actually acrylics do cover pretty well, but sometimes when you're working on top of watercolor, it can kind of suck the ink in. And I knew I was going to be using these markers. Acrylics are a little bit better, but the same thing can happen with those too. So I decided to do the layer of Mod Podge in between to just give me a nice smooth surface to work with. And then the fun part, well, it's all kind of all the fun part. I like every stage. I love the watercolor. I love the lines. So now I am just filling in different patterns within the different containers that I've created. And I'm trying to challenge myself to try new things. So like this little shark mouth, if that's what you want to call it, whatever that is. That's new. Haven't tried that before. Nothing wrong with repetition. Do whatever you want. I just like to challenge myself to try new things sometimes. So I have to laugh as I look back and watch me make these little doodle designs. What they look like, what you're probably thinking, is not what I intended them to be. Let's call them tadpoles, okay? Here's an example of a moment where I had put the red dot on the kind of orangey background and realized like that's not enough contrast. I don't like that. And I paused and thought, what can I do? And then I thought, oh, a flower. So sometimes our little like oopsies are what creates the next phase without even realizing it. So embrace those. Whenever you start making a mark where you're like, oh, I don't know if I like that, then see if you can turn it into something new. While I really like these acrylic markers, I do find that with the lighter colors like yellow and white that I end up having to do a second layer, which to me is really not a big deal. These markers are so cheap. I got them at Temu.com. I'll put the link down below. They are kind of a limited supply company. It's like a company out of China it's super cheap. It takes a little bit of time for the shipping, but they guarantee it by a certain date or they give you credit. And I don't get anything from Temu, but I'm always talking about them because it's kind of a fun website where you can find lots of good art supplies for really cheap. So in deciding when a piece is done, I've used the term when it smiles at you. I used to be a massage therapist, and when I had about 5 minutes left in a session, I would ask my clients, is there anything that feels jealous? Like, did I do the left foot a little bit more than I did the right foot? And the left foot is just like, oh, I just need a little bit more, please. I kind of look at that as I come to kind of the end of an art page. I pause a little bit and I kind of ask it, like, is there any little part, any one of these little containers that felt like it didn't get enough attention, just wanted a little more detail. And so that's kind of how I come to a conclusion where I can kind of look it all over and look at each little section and feel satisfied that it all got the attention it needed. So sometimes I have to learn a lesson more than once. I started to Mod Podge over and not everything was completely dry, and so I got some smudging and smearing, so I had to go back and kind of try to clean it up with a wipe, and then I chose to fix the white that got wiped away. And then I went to the store and bought this. I took it to my garage and opened up my trash can and sprayed it over the top so that I didn't have to get any chemical fumes in my house. So that's it. That's my finished product. I hope you enjoyed watching my process today and that you feel encouraged to give it a try yourself. We'll see you next time.